Hello everyone, this is Professor DePaulo. Welcome back to Psych 265, Research Online. And today we're going to be talking about how to write the introduction section of the APA Manuscript. So if you go to the Assignments tab on Blackboard here, you'll see that I have different guides for how to write each section. So we're going to start with the introduction section, and I'll walk you through the different parts of the introduction, how to sort of generate the rough draft that can get you a good grade, and you'll be able to revise it for the final paper. It won't be too much of a problem for you. So this is very important stuff because this is exactly how I want you to write the introduction. So I'm giving you the directions step by step, and I want you to sort of stick with this process. Don't just write what you want to write what I'm asking you to write. So I know I mentioned at the beginning of the semester that I was going to change a bit of the project from COVID to something else. What I decided to do is change the project within the COVID realm. So I'm still interested in COVID, and unfortunately, maybe for some of you, I'm still interested in knowing what works, what doesn't work with COVID, even though everybody's sick of COVID. To me, it's very important to realize what happened, how we handled it, and what we did right and what we did wrong. And we did a lot wrong. And how do we sort of change that for the next time? Because there will be a next time. Maybe not 100 years like the 1918 flu that is well known, that has been talked about since COVID arrived, going back to the 1918 flu and how many people have died. I mean, people forget, like, between the 1918 flu and COVID in 2019, 2020, that there was a lot of other bad things out there, including things like smallpox. And although smallpox has been eradicated, I think the last case occurred, or the last death of smallpox occurred in the 70s. People are not really concerned with smallpox anymore, but smallpox was a very serious illness that we were able to keep bottled up for the most part, and then developed immunity for it. But something like that can reappear, whether naturally, like COVID did for the most part. We don't know exactly how COVID evolved. That's debated. Or through like a biological warfare situation where we're hit with some, diseases that are viruses that we're not really prepared to handle anymore. Like a polio or a smallpox. So this is going to happen again at some point, and we need a better response than what we had with COVID. Because, to be honest, COVID was a disaster in terms of handling it, and it was a complete mess. So that's why I'm still interested in this, because I am more of a health/clinical psychologist, and these topics just kind of are really interesting to me. So I want to kind of analyze it from a different perspective, and so I changed it up a bit. So still COVID, but something different revolving COVID. So this is how you're going to write it. So the introduction should be at least 3 pages. Could be longer. Could be 3 to 5 pages. You don't really need more than that. But if you went a little bit over, it's not a big deal. You do not want like a 20-page introduction, mainly because I want to keep it to 8 paragraphs. And those are going to be really giant paragraphs if you're at 10 to 20 pages. So I want to keep it to like 3+ pages, double spaced, 12-point font, 1-inch margins, right? Standard font like a Times New Roman or an Arial or something like that. So that, not some crazy font with scripted language or little sort of things sticking out from the letters. There's all kinds of crazy fonts out there. Basic font. 12-point, double space, 1-inch margins. 8 paragraphs only. The first 2 paragraphs define the problem. So what is the problem is actually COVID, and why is it important? Well, it's important because many people died. We didn't handle things well. Right? It's still around, although it's less the mortality rate is less and we have some antiviral treatments for it, it's still causing problems that we're just kind of ignoring because we're tired of it. Most of us are sick of COVID, and I'm the only one who seems to not be sick of COVID because I find the whole situation from a behavioral point of view very interesting. That there's such a such divisiveness in terms of how to deal with COVID. Oh, we have to lock everybody up versus we let everybody live their normal life. And the answer probably somewhere in the middle there, and we're sort of stuck on these polar opposite rationales with dealing with COVID. Now, the COVID emergency has ended, but it's still here, and it's going to become endemic like the flu, although it has the potential to be much worse than the flu. And as you saw from the 1918 flu, the Spanish flu, they called it, flu can be pretty deadly. So we have to take this seriously still, even though we're tired of it. So those first two paragraphs are, what is the problem? The problem is COVID. Arrived in 2019. First cases detected in the U.S. were 2020, early 2020. By March 2020, COVID was everywhere, especially in New York City. And so that's the problem, and why is it important? And the importance of the topic is, how do we best prevent COVID and or another pandemic from basically destroying our society? And that's very important. Like, how do we get people to take things seriously? Like, mask wearing, does it work? Does it not work? I don't know. There's evidence that the masks are effective. There's some evidence suggesting the masks aren't as effective as we thought they were. So the answer is in between. But putting a mask on seems like a very basic thing and doesn't really impede anyone too much. Yet a large majority of the country refused to even wear a mask at the height of COVID. I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about the height of COVID, when we were on the original strain, or the Delta strain, which was much more deadly than what we have now. People were not wearing masks. People were not social distancing. People were not caring. They wanted to have a good time. They wanted to have fun. They wanted to live their life. And they were not going to let COVID stop them. But at the same time, when people are living their lives, and maybe those people are not getting very sick, or they're getting mildly sick, or not even aware that they're being infected with COVID, they're spreading it around to people that are more vulnerable. So how do we get everybody on the same page so the next time when there's a pandemic, we know what we're doing, and we can stop it and deal with it more effectively? So those are the first two paragraphs. What is the problem? COVID and the behaviors related to COVID in terms of stopping the spread of COVID. And why is it important? Well, the death toll, the polarization in the country. There's a lot of reasons why it's important. Still important. Because if it comes back and there's a mutation, then all of a sudden we're back in the COVID emergency, although they won't call it an emergency because they know people are tired of it. But you can go back to a situation where COVID is infecting a lot of people and killing people. That's not impossible. I mean, hopefully it's behind us, but you never know. And then also, what's next? If it's not COVID, it'll be something else. Especially the way people are, manipulating viruses genetically. The spread of the virus, very easily could escape a lab. Not saying that COVID escaped a lab or not. We don't know yet. There's very little opportunity to make that known because obviously China is not allowing us to conduct any research. So we don't know exactly the origin. But could we be studying dangerous viruses, manipulating them genetically, and whoops, something happened. We lost containment of the virus. Now it's out in the world, and then we don't know what's going to happen. So even if COVID was a spillover effect from a wet market, and the evidence seems very mixed on that, that's more theoretical than actually there being evidence to suggest that. What about the next disease? We don't know. How do we contain it? We don't know. Will people listen? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Probably not. So that's important that you establish this in the first two paragraphs. Paragraph 3 starts a literature review. So each of the paragraphs from paragraph 3 through paragraph 7 is going to be about one study that you are summarizing. So one study per paragraph. And each of those 5 studies should relate to one of the 5 hypotheses. So we have 5 hypotheses. We should have 5 studies that you find. And you're going to summarize each one in a paragraph. So paragraph 3 is going to be study 1. Paragraph 4 is going to be study 2. Paragraph 5 is going to be study 3. Paragraph 6 is going to be study 4. Paragraph 7 will be study 5. So those studies should be found either through Google Scholar or through PsycInfo, database in the library, PsycArticles. So we're studying a lot of variables. We're studying somatization, health anxiety, gender, depression, attachment style, alexithymia, empathy as possibly predictors of behavior related to things like mask wearing and vaccination. So here are the 5 hypotheses that I've laid out. Empathy will be positively correlated with the belief in the effectiveness of COVID-19 boosters and vaccines in general. So paragraph 3 should be about this hypothesis. Go find an article that talks about empathy and vaccination. How do we find that article? We can try Google Scholar. Type in empathy and vaccination, and you got a whole bunch of articles. Find an article with a PDF or an HTML. Do not pay for any articles. There's plenty of articles available for free. Find an article, read the abstract, right? Read the abstract, and if this abstract is something that's relevant to the hypothesis, right? You can then summarize this article. So for hypothesis 1, which goes in paragraph 3, I can read this article and summarize what happened in that paragraph. So that's what you do. You can go to either Google Scholar, which I did here, or if you want, you can go to BMCC Library and go through PsycInfo. So it's under databases. You could pick psychology here. And then you have either PsycArticles or PsycInfo. I like using PsycInfo, but you can use PsycArticles, doesn't matter. Click on this. You're going to have to log in. Once you're logged in, you can then do the keywords. Empathy, we'll do the same one. And vaccination. So you got a bunch of articles here about empathy and vaccination. Reducing COVID hesitancy among African Americans. Interesting. Information about herd immunity through vaccination and empathy. So this has to do with empathy related to taking the vaccine. If you don't like what you get with empathy and vaccination, you could do empathy and COVID vaccination or COVID boosters, doesn't matter. And you'll get other things here. Levels and correlates of empathy and altruism during the pandemic. If that's interesting, read the full text. Make sure you at least read the abstract. Make sure it's, interesting enough. This is about Germany, correlates of altruism and empathy and vaccination. All right, during COVID, that might be something you want to look at. This article is about vaccination intention. The motivation to get vaccinated against COVID was related to and causally promoted by mere information about herd immunity through vaccination and by empathy. So it's saying that empathy here is a factor involved in people getting vaccinated. That's perfect. So there are multiple articles here that you can find that can work. Once you find an article related to the hypothesis, you write a one-paragraph summary. So if it's empathy and vaccination, that's the first hypothesis, that's paragraph 3. Read the study, write a one-paragraph summary of the study. One large, decent, moderate to large paragraph that really describes the study and what they found. That is part of what's called the literature review. So you're going to have 5 articles minimum for this section, for this literature review. So paragraph 3 is about empathy and COVID vaccination. Paragraph 4 will be an article summarized about COVID-19 booster and empathy. So that's very similar to the first one, but it's more about the COVID booster. So if you can find something about the COVID booster, that's great. If not, find something about vaccination and empathy again. Find another article. You can summarize that in passage 2. So I don't know how much you're going to find on the COVID booster because that's new and that's changing. And is there a difference between the original vaccine, getting the original vaccine, and getting the booster? In terms of empathy, that's the question that I'm asking here. So something related to the booster. If you can't find booster, you can do another article on COVID vaccination. That's paragraph 4. Paragraph 5, health anxiety correlated with fear of side effects. Can you find anything about health anxiety and side effects of boosters or a vaccination in general? And these articles don't have to be perfect. They have to be related in some way to this. So you have to look around for something that's related to this that's been done already. And then the one paragraph summary. Alexithymia and vaccines and boosters. Can you find something on that? And then finally, attachment anxiety with desire for people to get vaccinated or boosters. Can you find something on that? So first hypothesis, paragraph 3. Second hypothesis, paragraph 4. Third hypothesis, paragraph 5. Fourth hypothesis, paragraph 6. Fifth hypothesis, paragraph 7. One paragraph summaries of these 5 different articles. So you need a minimum of 5 articles here, one for each hypothesis. And then the last paragraph is simply stating these hypotheses. So all you have to do is write in paragraph form these 5 hypotheses down in paragraph 8. So there's nothing to do there. You just copy what I've written here and put it in a paragraph form. And that's it. That's your 8-paragraph introduction. It's mainly a literature review. Obviously, if I was submitting a manuscript to a journal, I would want to write a little bit more sophisticated introduction than just article summaries. But to start out and just sort of get your feet wet in terms of doing research and reading about research and writing up a manuscript, this is a pretty basic template in terms of how to write the introduction. So 8 paragraphs. Paragraph 8 is simply just these hypotheses, put them together in a paragraph form. Do not list them, put them in a paragraph. So you should have 8 total paragraphs. That's going to be at least 3 pages, maybe more. Double space, 1-inch margins, 12-point font. So it's legible and I can read it. Normal font that I can read, not some crazy font. And you should be fine. So a lot of this is going into Google Scholar and going into PsycInfo, Psych articles, and looking around for relevant articles. If you can't find something exactly related to the hypothesis, find something close and summarize. You may not be able to find the perfect article for each hypothesis, but you can find something that's kind of close. And then give me the summary of that. So a minimum of 5 articles here. If you have any questions, let me know. If not, bye for now. Hopefully that helps you write the introduction, and I'll see you back online soon.